Welcome to All Things Social Security. Enjoy your video.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening. We are going to talk just a few minutes here about the 2024 SSI rule change that had to do with when in-kind support and maintenance was not going to be used as an offset to your SSI because you're getting subsidized rent. It was a really big deal back then. And I think what we're seeing is that some offices, the staffers don't really understand it. And I think it's because of how the SSA at that time decided to implement it. They didn't exactly take away from the Code of Federal Regulation, that language. Rather, they added to it and said, and we're going to interpret this way going forward so that this will happen. So let's just get into it a little bit. And I really hope it helps. I'm doing this because someone who is on SSI reached out to me because the field office in her particular area of her particular state is refusing to acknowledge her lease agreement. It might be a sublet, I'm not sure, saying that they are going to apply the 1/3 reduction, despite the fact that she may be paying $700-800 a month in rent to the other tenant, which would be like the sub landlord, I suppose. If it is a sub landlord, I'm not really sure. I did offer a consult, but in case that's not affordable, and I get that, I really do. I just can't do pro bonos for every person who wants one or needs one, because then I would never get my client work done and I'd have to close up shop. But this is a way sometimes I can get out a little explanation that can help people in the same boat without, going in the red. So let's get to it. So the core problem here has been, and I just have some notes here, so bear with me if they're a little stilted. But so it was back in 2024 when Social Security changed the SSI rent rules, but we are finding that many SSA staff are still applying the old rule. And under the old rule, if you paid less than fair market value for fair market rent, I should say, for whatever place you are renting or a portion of a place you are renting, Social Security treated the difference as free housing and understandably reduced your SSI because part of the SSI is tagged as being for shelter, right? As opposed to other expenses of living. And under the new rule, that is no longer true in many cases, but some SSA staff don't seem to realize it yet, and they're still hinging on it. And I kind of got a gist as to why they're doing that, but it's sloppy because it's not right. It's just complicated for them. So before the old rule, before September 30th of 2024, to avoid an SSI reduction, the rent had to equal fair market value. If the rent was below fair market value, the SSA treated it as a rental subsidy because basically the landlord's giving you, say, $1,000 worth of something for, say, 300 or 500 or something like that. So they're actually footing the rest of it for you of the fair market value, and you wouldn't have to pay it. Usually it's a kind thing to do. The SSI was reduced under the in-kind support rules, and the 1/3 reduction to the SSI was commonly put in place. That was the way the rule was. And so when it happened, it was generally legitimate. That old rule still seems to be occurring by, I guess, pockets of staff who haven't quite gotten it under wraps that the rule changed over a year ago. So the new rule is that Social Security must treat a rental as a business arrangement if, one, you are required to pay rent, and two, the rent you are required to pay is at least the presumed maximum value, PMV, not the fair market value, FMV. If those two things are true, then Social Security cannot reduce your SSI by and large, even if the rent you're paying is below the fair market value for that property that you're renting. So let's say the fair market value is $900 and they're only charging you $700. You're paying more than PMV, which is generally the easy way of looking at it, is as it tends to run as 1/3 plus $20, say, of the full Social Security benefit amount. So if you're paying more than 1/3 towards your landlord, then under a rental agreement, then you are paying PMV or above. And this holds true even if you're renting from a roommate or a family member, as far as I can tell. So fair market value of rent is no longer required once the rent meets or exceeds PMV, the presumed market value, that $334 and change in 2025, which will go up presumably in 2026. I don't have the number with me off the top of my head. So where are the staff getting it wrong? I think this is where it's coming from. They look at the regulation that says the CFR, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, says that rent has to equal fair market value. That's what it has always said, and it still says that. So it's still in the regulation, but it's no longer the whole rule because SSA added the part, and that we'll get to in a second. SSA added a new rule, but it didn't replace the old sentence. And I wonder if that was for expediency's sake. Maybe they can change things in certain ways without going through the whole comment, changing it to make a regulation change. It's a little bit more arduous, I suppose. So there are two ways to have a business arrangement. Rent equals fair market value, which is the old rule, or the new addition, rent equals or exceeds PMV, the new rule. The SSA staff are stopping at step one and ignoring step two, which is the new alternative way to meet the rule and be found as a business arrangement. So in real life, this is affecting people right and left. And because of the misunderstanding, people with valid leases are being told that SSA won't accept them. I think that's what my friend today was averring to. SSI recipients are being threatened with a 1/3 reduction still, at least some of them. And field offices are applying the rules that no longer apply. And it's not just a judgment call. They can't make a judgment call on that. It's a legal error on their part. And I think it's entirely appealable. So in a nutshell, Social Security used to require fair market rent to avoid an SSI reduction. That changed in 2024. Now, if you're required to pay rent that meets or exceeds the presumed maximum value, which is that $334 in 2025, but it'll be going up slightly in 2026, Social Security must treat it as a business arrangement and cannot reduce your SSI, even if the rent is below market value. Some SSA staff are still applying the old rule and ignoring the new one. So here's what I think you should do if this happens to you. First of all, ask for a written notice, not just a verbal explanation from the SSA. I know sometimes getting a written notice in a timely fashion is going to be hard, though, but that would be ideal. Definitely file an appeal citing the 2024 rule. Point the SSA to the final rule and the POMS, and this is the number for it, SI 00835.380. Let me say it again, POMS SI 00835.380. Do not even bother arguing that you meet fair market rent if the PMV is already met. You don't have to go that extra step because the PMV is the other alternative method now of showing that it's a business arrangement. You're paying at least PMV, therefore it's a business arrangement. It's not a subsidy that counts against you. I believe that if you're being reduced for this discounted rent situation and you are paying PMV, that you may be entitled to the full SSI under the new rule. And I think it's worth fighting for. That's a lot of money every month, right? Over $300 getting subtracted from your survival monies. Yeah. I would also, I can't even imagine anyone who is under PMV and having to argue fair market value. I mean, when is fair market value going to be where a rental is going to be under 334, even for a room, just a room? So I think generally the PMV is going to save everybody. Just make sure you're paying rent of at least the PMV and use this rule and go directly to the POMS, which is what ties in and says, yeah, that rule about fair market value exists, but we've added this other way of people not having to be considered subsidized and getting penalized, you know, with the offset against their SSI, just because they're not paying what the market says would be the value of it. It's the PMV way. It's just an additional alternative way that you have a right to be considered under. And if you're paying at least PMV, you should be good. Okay. I try to say that simply, guys. I know I'm repeating myself, but I think maybe it would drive it home a little bit. All right. That's it, guys. I hope that helps. Look at that POMS and use it in your argument, and definitely appeal and look at your deadlines for appeal. If you fail to appeal in a timely fashion, because it's SSI, every month stands alone going forward, you can always readjust it later and say, listen, I'm asking for a recalculation of my SSI because boom, here's my lease agreement and here is the rule. And now you've got a solid date now of what you're arguing. And then if they refuse it, then you need to appeal so you can keep that date back to when you've asserted the right to a recalculation. But definitely always read about your appeal deadline. And when you appeal it, I would send a certified return receipt requested and or FedEx or UPS with tracking signature. Costs a little bit more. I would follow it up with a fax as well and keep your fax confirmation. Now you've got two forms. If one of them fails, the other one might suffice. All right. All right, guys. I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday season. It is shortly before Christmas. Today is the 23rd. I'm putting this out. I don't know when you guys are going to see it. If I can get it out earlier and bump something else, I will. All right. But stay strong, keep your chin up, and I hope you all have a peaceful and meaningful Christmas.
Hello again. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful, if not just a little bit informative. In the event you have a Social Security question you want addressed, please feel free to make a comment below and ask the question, even if nothing to do with this particular video. And just a quick, again, reminder, we have our daily video shares and tips around noon every day of the week. And on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have our live Q&A session where you can come in live and enter your questions in the chat. And we all pretty much have a good time for an hour or two. I look forward to seeing you there, hopefully. And lastly, don't forget about our benefactor memberships. They're very reasonably priced. The first one is very nominal and you get a few perks, but on a bigger scale, it contributes to us being able to fulfill a mission of assisting certain people with representation that would otherwise not be able to get it. We look forward to continuing to do that. And so far it's working out like the bomb. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Bye-bye now.